All right, we're live. So this is Gavagai and mischievous heathen is with me to talk
Woo!
about the hangout with me and Trey Jadlow that just ended. I don't think heathen you've seen the end of it. It sounded like from what you just said. So
No, I saw. I don't know how long it went. I think I saw maybe 30 minutes of it.
okay,
Like when he touched upon some stuff that okay, for example, when he was talking about like the forming of the Constitution, and then you get to know like the history of it. I just remember the conversation he had with Alex Botten about English history and European history. And Alex is like, yeah, you're wrong, and here's the reason why. And he's like, you don't know your own country's history, do you? And it's like, you fucking prick. Like, the guy lives there. You know what I mean? Like, he gave a pretty, well thought out explanation and kind of corrected you on some things. And instead of saying, hey, man, maybe I should look that up, or maybe I could be wrong, he's just like, nope, nope, I'm fucking Trey. I can't be wrong.
right. Well, yeah, and I mean, and on top of that, just the condescension there again. Like you don't know your own country's history. I mean,
Right.
there's no reason to use that kind of condescending language and response. You could say that's not how I understand it. I mean, there's a level of humility that is just a positive thing and can engender goodwill between people having a discussion.
Well, that was my point in the comment section, is that he's not. I know that you like discussing this stuff, and in my head, I'm like, "You're too good for him, Gab guy." You know what I mean? Like, 'cause I was like, "You're too good for that."
Uh,
So, if I can at least give my impression, because I listened to the first half of it, um, and you just experienced it, so I don't know how fired up you are, but I'm kind of fired up a little bit. Um, so forgive me for any language that may happen to leak out. But
that's
so
fine.
the first part of it, it seemed kind of okay. Now, when Trey gets mad, he says "my friend" a lot, right? Initially, he said, "This is my new friend." Okay, fine, blah 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 blah. But to me, every time he goes, "Listen, my friend," I hear, "Look, asshole." I mean, honestly, that's kind of, but he can't say that because he's a quote unquote Christian. So I noticed that he was trying to use this shotgun effect on you, where he'll ask you a question, you're like, okay, so here's my thought, and you're kind of like finding your words, and you're kind of formulating this explanation in your head, and he's like, so what you're saying is this, and you're like, no, and you're like, okay, but you just said that, and you're like, no, I didn't, and you're like, okay, so you're saying this, like the opposite, and he's like, and you're like, no, well, this is what I'm saying, and you went, how many times did you go over the I'm human?
Right.
This is what I'm
Yeah.
referring to. I'll get into specifics. Maybe you can elaborate on that since you had the conversation with me.
Yeah, no. Well, I mean, I think your description of the exchange was very very accurate. I mean, I'm very carefully trying to choose my words, and then he will intentionally like flip it on me and say, "Okay, this is what you're saying," and use different words than what I used that aren't the same and have different meanings and different connotations to them. So, yeah, it's a shell game almost of changing up the language and like, oh, are your words under here? Are your words under this one? No, look, I've got your words. Let me push them into your mouth.
you were like, I'm human, and so I find it valuable to be alive. I have a desire, through biology, blah blah. And you get like
Right.
this sort of, and he goes, so what you're saying is, doesn't it? Their humans are intrinsically special. And you're like, what? I was in my head like, what? You did not even use those words,
Yeah.
And then he would try to turn everything you said into some sort of, well, it sounded to me what he was trying to do was he was trying to crowbar you into a meta narrative that
Yeah.
he would define as a meta narrative, so then he can pick it apart.
Yeah.
It's like, let me put your argument in this box, so I can like throw eggs at it essentially, and you
Right.
can't. But I think you were much more patient than I would have been.
Well, and the other thing is, I think that he is trying to box me into put me on the same level as his whole belief system and belief set. So, when I'm talking about things that are related to the scientific view on, the evolution and the results of that, and things that just naturally fall from this process of evolution, things that have an inborn desire, an instinct to survive, are going to do better than things that don't care one way or another, or alternatively things that have a desire to not live and who are suicidal by nature. Those individuals are going to be less successful. So we're going to see a population of species of a whole lot of different kinds that have an interest in surviving and living. So
and then this goober goes, so what you're saying is evolution purposed you.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm like, listen, go look up reification fallacy, right? Isn't that what it is when you're like giving like you know what I mean? Like that's not a what's the word I'm looking for? It's not a property of evolution. You know what I mean? Like it's not a thing to give purpose. But it's like it's kind of like when people say atheism is a religion.
Yeah.
So that way they can levy all the same arguments at quote-unquote atheism. It's kind of what you're doing. It's like, oh, you have a meta-narrative, but you can't justify it. And so, and then the worst part was he goes, oh, you're just saying it's magic, poof, and it happened.
It's a just so story, yeah.
I'm like, fool, that's what you're saying. That's you. I'm not saying that. That's you. What is this guy talking about? I'm like, if you directly ask him, and he said to me, in my hangout with him, he said, I believe God created everything ex nihilo. So how in the hell is he even objecting to, I mean, oh, you believe it's magic. No, fool, that's you. That's your whole thing. Stop telling me that.
Right. Yeah, well, and when I tried to compare it to water, he was saying, no, water is different. Water is not purpose of or whatever. And it's not. That's just how things happen. We inevitably would end up having this desire to survive through evolution, just like water inevitably will go towards the lowest point, which is either the ocean or a lake or something, if it's closed off or whatever. But that's just how it works, because those are the laws of nature that determine these things. Yeah.
The thing with someone like Trey is he has such a hard-on for like purposefulness and stuff like that. He just can't wait to say that word. It gives him a big fat fucking boner. I just know it. And so he can't understand. Like, I know what you were getting at when you were talking about, facts of reality. When you were saying like there are things, this is how things are on Earth. It's not a just so argument. These, it's a fact of reality. We can't, like humans can't survive in space without equipment. Right? We can't just like dance on the moon. Right.
Right.
These are because there's physics and there's laws that govern. There's physical laws that govern the universe.
Yeah, yeah, and that combined with the fact that evolution has equipped us or instilled in us our desire, now we can look at the world and say, okay, based on this desire that we have, we can reason about how best to accomplish or reach the goal that we have. It's been instilled in us through the process of evolution. It doesn't make it a true goal. It's what it is. It's true that we want that, and now, given the fact that we also are reasoning beings, we can apply our reason to figure out what works best to accomplish that goal.
Yeah. See, here's the problem with Trey's thinking, I think. Let me take that back. I'm begging the question by assuming he's thinking. So he has these sort of points in his head. Purposefulness, all these little, these things. They're like tent poles, And unless when someone talks to him like you talk to him, unless he can take what you're saying and put it in the same category as that tent pole, it doesn't make any sense to him. You know what I'm saying? That I know it's a poor analogy, but do you get what I'm saying? It's like out of his own rigid mindset, he can't grasp concepts or just refuses to even entertain them.
Yeah. Well, and that's true with a lot of the theists. I think that they just can't they can't step outside of their worldview to try and understand. Like I can say, okay, if I was a Christian or when I was a Christian, I believed X, Y, and Z, and I can grasp that, and I can step into that worldview and say, okay, yes, within that worldview, these things make sense, but to be able to step out of that worldview and do an analysis of something else, I think is an important. Who was it? Was it Aristotle that said kind of the mark of intelligence is the ability to entertain ideas without accepting them. So to entertain the idea and say, okay, if these things are true, hypothetically, these things follow.
Yeah, and I don't know who said it, but I've heard that quote before, honestly. And here's, I mean, you guys, you and Fox, and you have your specialties. I don't know any of that shit, honestly. Like I don't know, like you know what I mean. But to see that to me, all that stuff is fucking smoke and mirrors, all of it.
Yeah.
All of it. As soon as you say something to the effect of, I think at one point he said you were talking about something. I don't remember the exact part of the conversation, and he mentioned that he did pull not pull that God did it, but he believes that you have to have a eternal creator because you were getting into not where someone would normally say infinite regress when you're talking about your parents and my parents had sex that's how it. You shouldn't have to go beyond that, right? So
right.
When you say my parents had sex, and he goes, yeah, I go back, and I'm like, you don't have to, because you didn't exist before then. I know what the trick is, and he thinks that it's a trick to not have to go back and back and back and back and back and back to the beginning of whatever, if there was a beginning. But I would love to almost just go, okay, then their parents, then their parents, then their parents for like 45 minutes, and just go, oh well. Category, the conversation's over, ran out of time. I mean, we only got 80 million more that
right.
Because he's not interested in it. He's not. It's just all that stuff. That's why to me, when he says you'll bring up a point and he goes, oh yeah, well, did you know about the 14th Amendment said, right? And you're just not, and then he never really addresses the question you just brought up, or he'll say something and then he'll go, well, do you agree with that? And you're like, dude, Dick, you didn't answer my question. I just want to. None of that stuff to me. I think it's all smoke and mirrors. I think that he's getting away from the base issue.
Yeah. Well, and then I mean, the whole hangout was supposed to be about same-sex marriage, and I think we probably talked about 2 minutes of the hour conversation on same-sex marriage, just because he has to go back to these meta-narrative and what's the other catchphrase, or one of the other ones is shoot, it slipped my mind. Self-existence and all of this stuff. Just
yeah.
You just want to say, can you not just have a normal conversation?
No, I would hate to be at like Chipotle eating lunch with that guy. Like I would kill myself. It's like you go, dude. I'm trying to eat my burrito, bro, and you know what? This shit's just contingent, so I'm gonna eat it. It's kind of like when somebody, when some Christian says, they'll make the claim for having universal objective morals or some bullshit,
yeah.
Right? And then which it's to me begging the question, because they're just kind of assuming that they haven't actually demonstrated that there is such a thing, but they're claiming it's such a thing. You know what I mean? Like,
right.
And much like what Trey does the same thing with the self-existent thing. He goes, well, he gets back and then he goes, well, if it regress, it's ridiculous. There happens to that self-existent, or you violate the law. But he never actually establishes anything. He just sort of says it.
Mm-hmm.
Everything he accused you of in this hangout, and I'm sorry if I'm loud right now, but everything he accused you of in this hangout, he was doing. It was the ultimate, it was like, you should have entitled the hangout Ramblings of a Hypocrite. Honestly, because that's kind of what it was.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing that drove me crazy is how he's trying to say these things that contributed to our Constitution are somehow indirectly related to the Bible, but all he's got is that Christians came up with them, that they were important to the Christians that came up with them, and that he endorses, the Constitution and things. But there was no real solid link. Jesus saying pay your taxes and Paul saying obey authority doesn't give you the Bill of Rights.
Yeah, that's quite a big leap, dude. That's like Evel Knievel jumping over the Grand Canyon on pay-per-view kind of leap. I mean,
yeah.
But that's typical. That's just more sharpshooter bullshit. It's like, oh, I want to take this one thing, extrapolate it out. It's. I mean.
Yeah, and how he rambled on about all this historic stuff that didn't have anything to do with it. The divine right of kings and
right.
separation of church and state and blah, 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 blah. That doesn't tie it to your Bible.
Right. And also has nothing to do with gay marriage.
No, yeah. Yeah.
It's almost like, I swear, when he's speaking, I see him with a top hat and the cape, and like he's like a magician on a cruise ship. And it's like, look over here. Like he's doing, he's like palming the card in the other hand. He's a masterful dodger, and yeah. he knows enough false history to sound smart. And I don't even want to say that it's false, because there are parts of it that are probably at least somewhat true.
Right.
But I don't know what his sources are.
Right.
But it sounds to me like his sources are horseshit. Because it's like nothing that I've ever learned in school or college or since then.
Yeah. Well, and I'm still puzzling over how his story about King Uzziah getting leprosy because he... Oh, I guess that tied into like a division of labor or something like that, kind of. That he was the king, but it was the priests who were supposed to go into the Holy of Holies. And so God, struck him down with leprosy.
I like that you laugh and you go, what a loving God.
Right. Well, the guy is a good guy, according to, as he's portrayed in the story, this King Uzziah. And he goes in to try and give thanks and make an incense offering, and Yahweh's like, oh no, you're gonna get leprosy.
Yeah. I like that you got him to admit. I was stunned. I was driving home from a freaking Kinko's, and I heard this and my jaw dropped, dude. Well, my jaw dropped from the cost of having to make some copies, but my jaw also dropped because you got him to say, how'd you put it, like if somebody was more violent and destructive, would that, would he be more holy? And he goes, yes. And I'm like, what? What?
Run the tape back.
You freaking psychopath. I'm like, in my head, I'm still making a video of that. I'm taking a clip of that. That is classic, dude, because how do you even? Dude.
How do you even?
How do you even?
Yeah.
Well, by the way, Gandhi is was he a molester and a rapist, and he was.
No, he wished someone would be raped.
Oh, okay, but didn't he say something like he did some other things?
He was abusive, and yeah, I don't know, based on a book that he read.
Right. Yeah. The one book. I mean, I guarantee you, like, here's another a coin flip in that sense. Mother Teresa, right, who many regarded as, like, a very holy and devout woman and kind of this and that, and she was, supposedly a big kind of bitch, right? Like, I've heard Hitchens speak on it a few times, and I've read a few things where, she said stuff like, suffering is like blessing or something, and she would refuse to give whole halls or, like recovery halls like medicine because she believed that. You know what I mean? Like,
because it had alcohol in it or something, or what was the deal?
Yeah, I don't know. It was a while ago when I read it, and I'm sure anyone listening, feel free to look it up, dude. It's on the internet, and don't be like Trey and not look shit up. And so, but, people regard her as, one of the pillars, so you view Gandhi as a paragon of morality. So people sometimes view her as that.
Yeah.
But I guarantee you he wouldn't hold that opinion of her.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and my whole point was not that Gandhi was pure and 100% ethical in every case or whatever. I'm sure he did some wrong things. I don't know whether or not what Trey claims that he did is accurate or whatever, but he did a heck of a lot of good for millions of people and made millions of people's lives better, whether or not there were some people that were immediately related, and directly influenced that he jerked around a bit. That could be the case, but he's not Hitler.
Right, exactly.
And if Hitler prayed the sinner's prayer or whatever and repented of his sins and asked for forgiveness and accepted Jesus as a savior, like before he passed, died, he's not in hell, and Gandhi is, because Gandhi didn't accept Jesus. So it has nothing to do with your record, and that's not just.
Oh yeah. Here's the best part. So again, right, he was putting words in your mouth by trying to get you to at least say that, Gandhi, in Trey's words, is a paragon of virtue, so he can try to tear it down with these examples. Now, like you said, we don't know what Gandhi was up to. I've never studied the life of Gandhi, right? And maybe Gandhi did some dickish things, like, fuck, if he ate pizza, maybe he took the last slice of pizza one day. Like, fuck if I know, like, maybe he ate someone's lunch in the fridge, like, at the workplace. Like, I don't know. But even if I grant all those things, he's still not fucking nearly as bad as Hitler. Yeah. The best case you can make was, wow, Gandhi was an asshole. Yeah. But he's no Hitler. And, like, how do we, it's just, either way it doesn't matter, because of, even if Gandhi was all those things, and Gandhi converted on his deathbed or whatever, he'd be in heaven anyway. It doesn't matter. Like you said, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, well, let's take Billy Graham. Billy Graham has gone around his whole life. If he, on his deathbed, says, I really don't think I can believe anymore, Billy Graham is going to burn in hell for all of eternity, because that's all that matters is where you're at the moment before you're dead, whether or not you accept Jesus as your savior and repent of your sins, whatever that means, on your deathbed. That's all it is. And this is how your eternal destiny is determined, whether you will burn in hell or whether you will be, sit up there to worship a deity for eternity, which doesn't sound, it sounds better than burning forever, but...
Well, technically, God reprograms your brain so you can only feel joy. Yeah. So it'll be great to do that. But I love how Trey was like, oh, not torture, torment. Like, that's better. Yeah. Like, that's somehow better.
In a place of eternal fire where you're being tormented.
Right. So in what way is torment? And torment's really relative. If it's a lake of fire, okay, that's going to suck no matter what. Yeah. But if in hell, if I have no Wi-Fi, that's fucking torment. I'm telling you right now.
You have the promise of Wi-Fi, but it's really sketchy and crappy.
Like I get to hell and it's all dial-up. I'm like, no! No! It would be like back when I was in college and like you were looking at nudie chicks and like it would just load their face and like it would be so slow it's done dial-up. You're like, no! Hurry up! Someone's gonna walk in on me. Hey, I don't see torment being any better than torture.
Well, burning is terrible. I've had some burns on like my fingers and things, but to be submerged in fire where you're not burned up and consumed, but you are just having that sensation all the time, always, and it never goes away and never decreases, that's just as bad as it gets, I think.
Do you think, Trey dodged this one too, because he never actually specified like what he felt was like hell was, the torment. Yeah, right. I'd like to know what he thought about that, because some Seichen Bruggencage, that slimy motherfucker, that guy was like, oh, it just means apart from God. That kind of thing. Like, Ben
is here.
Holy crap, it's a Benneberry.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Yeah, good.
Did
So
have
I,
you heard
I was listening to the conversation, but I haven't listened to the whole thing. So
Join the club. Neither has Heathen.
Yeah, I didn't catch the whole thing, and but I had enough just to like yell and curse and bust balls.
It doesn't take much.
It's Trey, so you don't really need all that much. You just say Trey. Dun-dun-dun. Shh. Good night, everybody.
Yeah.
So what did you think?
I think what stopped me listening prematurely was as soon as he went into meta. I was like, no.
That was pretty early on.
That was like within 2 minutes.
Yeah.
I contemplated leaving when he said, "Hi, this is Trey Jadlow." I had that urge to veer my car off the side of the road. We were discussing up to the point. I'm not sure the meta narrative portion was that was. You guys touched upon that in the first 10 minutes, right? Like not even the first 5 minutes, and then you guys went on to like he went on to dazzle you with his wisdom as far as history goes and the Constitution.
Yeah.
Just wait to hear that part.
Okay. Can't wait.
Yeah,
was it all correct?
Well, he has this whole history in his head, and I don't know where he gets it from. I think he just Trey tends to learn things from like one source. I am so dizzy right now looking at your camera, and he takes it and just runs with it, and he never questions anything. And that's part of the problem with Trey, is that he cannot be wrong. He cannot be wrong, and you cannot question anything because he has these things defined in his head. And if it's not that, or he can't fit what you're saying into those categories, then you're wrong.
Yeah, I think that's really true. He latches on to one thing that he likes that gets him to where he wants to go, and then he's going to run with it.
Yeah, he's admitted to me in a comment section that his argument from contingency didn't convince him that God exists, that he was already a believer. Like I figure most people that have these arguments do. They're already believers, and they want to be little mini apologists, so they learn these little arguments, and they parrot them back in Google Hangouts. And he just takes these things, and it's like a kid with the ball in the playground and doesn't want to give it up. It's like he's going to hold on to this thing like it's the end of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you read my history of Western culture book? No? Well, here's what my history of Western culture book says that Christianity is right. And have you read my Gandhi is bad book?
Oh, he badmouthed Gandhi.
Yeah. This is my book that tells me Gandhi was bad. This is my book that tells me that Yahweh is real.
He equated Hitler and Gandhi, in some amazing passion. Like what did he say about Gandhi? Like he was sadistic and he mocked his cousin and he beat some people. Didn't he say something when he hit people?
He molested girls.
He molested, yeah.
He was mean to somebody.
He fucking changed lanes on the freeway without signaling.
He tormented somebody for a long time.
Yeah, Gabby was trying to make the point that that old adage where if Hitler converted on his deathbed or whatever, he would be in heaven, kind of thing, blah blah blah. And all Gabby's point was that in comparison to Hitler, right? I'm already losing my train of thought, but in comparison to Hitler, Gandhi was overall a much better person, at least in our contemporary opinions, morally speaking. And so Trey quickly jumped on this. He sensed blood in the water, and he goes, "So you're saying that for you, Gandhi is a paragon of virtue?" And Gabby's like, "What? No, I'm not saying." It was just a comparison, if I'm not mistaken, to Hitler. And then he goes on this big rant about how Gandhi was a molester and shit. And I was like, where'd you get this stuff?
Yeah. Yeah. Killed 6 million people versus, improved the life quality of life for millions and millions of people, not only just in the time that he lived, but across history now, that for generations there have been millions of people in India who have better lives because Gandhi did what he did when he was alive. That's the comparison I was making.
You're a pretty well-read guy, Benna. Have you heard any of this stuff about Gandhi?
No, not really. No, I haven't. Not about Gandhi, but yeah. Any argument can be made really to try and bring everybody down from the Christian perspective, anyway.
Yeah, well, one of the things that Trey listed, right, was that he was a homosexual, and he says that word with such absolute scorn and
disdain,
disgust, and disdain. It comes off of his lips like
like it's got some weight to it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whenever he says it, there's some stank on it. I think that's what Gabby's trying to say.
Yeah.
What do you think of Trey overall, Benna?
I mean, it's hard because most of my interaction, obviously, with him is just in post. So I haven't had a conversation with him, a very short one, in Hangouts. But obviously, I've watched him in Hangouts, and his condescension, and I get where he's coming from. I get the sort of position that he's in and he's trying to uphold, which is very hard. Puts him in a position of coming across as a jerk to defend that position, basically. So, I know it's hard. His online presence, I'm not a fan of.
Are you where are you located in the world, Ben? If you don't mind me asking.
In Australia.
Or are you Australian? Are you okay? I didn't know you were Australian.
Yeah, that's why it's hard for me to. Usually, I don't get online, as in Hangouts and so on, because just the time difference.
Yeah, I see you pop on all the in posts and stuff, but I never knew you were from. I see you once in a blue moon in a Hangout.
Yeah, and I rarely say anything.
Yeah.
Well, we're glad you're here in our Hangout.
Yeah, I watch a ton of Hangouts. I just never go in them. I feel I'm not YouTube famous enough to go into a room. You know what I mean?
Well, you'll never get there if you don't.
Yeah, I know. My mouth
depends how much you. Sorry, it depends how much you like the confrontation and arguing, and I like it, but not to a point where it's just, when you've got a room of 10 people or whatever the max is numbers, it's just just pointless. So I'd rather just leave my post and it stays. It can't be twisted, and so that's why I prefer posting. Trey's often trying to get me into a Hangout, and I'm like, no, I'm happy posting because you can see what I've actually said, and you can't twist my words.
Well, you can take more time to think about it too, and when you're in a Hangout with Trey, he's very quick at popping things off, and we've already discussed how he'll say, okay, well, what you're saying is blah blah blah, and it's completely different than what you've said. He's using completely different words, so you have to process if his words actually come even close to what you've said. And if not, then you have to back up and say, well, wait, no, that's not what I said. I said this, and I used these words because these words represent my view. And it takes forever to get anywhere with him in a conversation, in a live conversation. So,
yeah.
There seems like there's no simple answers. Like, you're trying to go down a certain path, and you ask specific questions, and you think you're going to get either A or B response, and you get C, and it just goes off in another direction constantly.
Yeah.
And you're forever trying to get back to your original track to try and go down this path, and it just doesn't happen.
Oh, this goes down a rabbit hole, dude.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Many rabbit holes. We ended up talking about abortion. We ended up talking about biblical, the integrity of the Bible, the Scripture. We
Yeah,
talked about the Old Testament or the New Testament gospel accounts and whether or not they're reliable.
yeah, that's the thing with Trey. He's one of if you were if you were talking to some guy, like a neighbor or something, you could get into these sort of things and have a meaningful conversation, assuming that person was remotely courteous and intellectually honest. Yeah, but Trey's not any of those things, or either of those things. you know, he's out to definitely spike the ball
Yeah.
for sure.
Well, and he throws out so much that you want to go, wait, no.
Yeah, it's like
Four of the 5 things that you just rattled off, I have a problem with, and here's why. So you want to go back and take them one at a time, but you don't get anywhere in a conversation that way.
Right, like when we were talking about earlier, you were talking about as a human we have a desire to exist, right? Am I thinking correctly? And then so he would say, oh, so you're saying there's an intrinsic value, and you're like, no, this is what I mean. And then he says like, okay, so there's what word did he use? Like, so you're saying there's an objective intrinsic, and you're like, no, I didn't say. Where'd you get this from? Like, he just keeps tacking on bullshit. And then when you say, no, I didn't say that, and so then he'll take the opposite approach or the opposite position and go, oh, so it's not that? So you don't feel like there's any purpose involved or any value at all? And you're just like, no, I didn't. Just why do you keep doing that, you turd? Like,
yeah.
Like it's like what I find with a lot of these YouTube fundy guys is, we discussed about them trying to trip you up, but it's almost like they want to catch you saying the wrong thing so they can repeat it forever. Like JD Kane and Arcane Logos, fuck Arcane Logos, had a conversation once, and JD Kane freely admits this every time that Arcane comes up, where for the sake of argument, JD Kane had said something to I don't know what reality I'm in, or something like along those lines.
Yeah.
And to this day, like a year later or something, like Arcane Logos, that's all he got. You don't know what reality you're in. You don't know what reality you're in. So all of his other points are valid. He hasn't got to interact with JD Kane at all. He won this net, and that's what I find. That's what a lot of fundies try to do, is they try to get you in a position where you say the wrong thing like once, and they fucking take the ball and they run with it. They run all the way to Australia with it. You give it to Peterberry.
Yeah, I don't know this whole winning complex. What because they're not in it for the conversation of understanding, or even obviously understanding their own position. They just want to win, whatever the hell that means. So they miss out on a lot of stuff. They just put up all these walls, so their position doesn't get challenged, and they walk away thinking, "Yep, I won that one." But what did they actually gain? I mean, they gained nothing. So it's kind of depressing. I just think if I went into every conversation like that, like really defensive and, okay, I'm not going to be shown up, my thoughts and ideas are not going to be shown up. Doesn't matter what I say, what I put out there, I'll just walk away thinking, yep, my position's still solid. What's the point of that?
It's a very self-satisfactory position. Like I have a friend who became super uber Christian, like uber Christian. Like if she could wear a cape with a big C on it, she would. And she was involved with her church in like a group or something, and it was right around the time of the National Day of Reason or Ask an Atheist Day or one of those things, one of those kooky things we have here in America. And we were talking about her activities, and I said, I don't know if it's ever come up, but if you ever need someone to speak from this position, I'd be glad to answer questions, And I meant it to as a good thing, you know what I mean, to spark conversation. And she got defensive. She goes, well, are you going to try to convert people to atheism? And I'm just kind of like, what are you talking about, dude? I just said I would answer, whoa, hey, back it up, like my goal isn't to quote unquote, I'm not trying to win. I'm not trying to like steal your Christians away from you. I just offer to answer some questions if if it came up. And I think they have to have that position where either they stump the atheist, and so there's some self-satisfaction there where they're like, yeah, I know God exists. It's almost like a pat on the back, because they have to hold on to that so tight, because they're basing their whole life on it.
Yep.
Thanks, Gav. Thanks, Gav.
Yeah. One of the other things that came up was slavery.
Oh no.
And yeah, and I don't remember how we got onto that, but just the whole idea. Well, I might have thrown it at him like, your Bible is not concerned with justice because slavery.
Right.
But I don't know. He dipped and dodged, and there's nothing that these guys can say to try and say that slavery is not okay with the Bible. It through and through says it's okay. And then and here's the interesting thing that Trey did. He said, well, who is it? Paul, I think, says that in Christ there's no male, there's no female, there's no slave, there's no whatever, Jew or Gentile, everybody's equal. Well, okay, I mean that's a great sentiment, but it's not enforced by Paul when he sends Onesimus back to Philemon. Onesimus is an escaped slave in the book of Philemon, and he sends him back to his slave master and says, hey, you're a slave, you need to be a slave for this guy. And sends him back and writes a letter to the slave master saying, hey, don't beat him when he comes back. He doesn't say, well, don't beat him later. You shouldn't be beating your slaves. You shouldn't hold slaves. You should set them free. He says, be nice to him when he comes back. And Jesus, well, no, Paul also says, slaves, obey your masters. And in multiple letters, he writes it to the Ephesians and to the in the Colossians letter. So it's it's reiterated, and Jesus talks about slavery as well, and talks about that slaves should be obedient, basically. So there's just no getting around it. And then you have the Old Testament law, which is just full of slaves and laws about slavery and things. And
yeah, I don't know how how do they even attempt to rationalize that is beyond me. But
it's, you just separate it. It's I don't know.
Freaking
it
silly.
Doesn't make sense, and this was one of the reasons, one of the things that eventually compelled me to say, wow, this book was written by people and it's clear and it doesn't have any divine influence, but until you really are pressed and kind of have your nose shoved into it and say, look at it, it's there, this is what was happening. This is what they said. You just kind of gloss over it when you read it.
Right. Well, whenever you have to make the determination between like nice slavery, like it's indentured servitude, it's cool. You gotta treat them like the Jews. When it's one of those, I mean, when you got the Veckel and G-Man version of slavery, I mean, yeah, I guess it's not that bad, but for everybody else, it's
transatlantic slavery.
Yeah.
What was that?
Don't compare it. It's not transatlantic slavery.
Yeah, yeah, it's completely different. Completely.
These slaves weren't brought across any oceans, so your argument is invalid.
Right. Or I like there was a comment, a thread somewhere where I think it was Veckel that tried to make the point that it was the old that's the old covenant, blah 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 blah. We're into the new covenant now, and I think maybe it was Xbox Fiend or something, but someone posted and they said, yeah, but how does that make it any less immoral that happened? Yeah, I get that you don't have to follow those rules now, but it doesn't excuse God for being an asshole like back then, it's like. But if you're going to redefine slavery to not be slavery, then, I mean, where's the line drawn in that kind of ridiculousness? I mean, anything goes if you're going to redefine shit.
Yeah, I had a brief exchange with Jungle Jargon on slavery. Who was it? J.D. Kane posted a verse that I was not familiar with, related to how to offer a sacrifice if you have slept with one of your slaves who was pledged to be a wife for another man. So as long as your slaves are not pledged to be married to someone else or anyone else, you are free to sleep with them as much as you want. But it says, now if a man lies carnally with a woman who is a slave acquired for another man, but who has been in no way redeemed or given her freedom, there shall be punishment. They shall not, however, put him to death, because she was not free. He shall bring his guilt offering to the Lord and the tent, and so they have to kill cattle to make it okay for him to sleep with someone else's wife who was his slave, basically. But
you read Leviticus 19:20, right?
Yeah, exactly. And yeah, so my conversation with Jungle Jargon was, okay, so if the Bible says, slaves obey your masters, that means that you shouldn't resist when your slave owner comes to try and have sex with you. Is that not right? Because he was saying, well, the Bible is a perfect law and moral law and things like that, and just how do you can't do it. And so then he of course does his normal Jungle Jargon thing and says, well, you don't even think you have a maker. So I just want to say, okay, well, then you're conceding that this is immoral, right?
Yeah,
now you've stepped back and you're saying, okay, there's at least a deity, even if this book is full of immoral things.
There's I have in Leviticus 19:29 it says, do not degrade your daughter by making her a prostitute, or the land will turn to prostitution and be filled with wickedness. But can't you sell your daughter, though? I mean, like,
yes.
Isn't that, I don't know what their definition of prostitute was, but
you can't have her, make her a sex slave while she is in your possession, as a father. You can sell her to someone else, and that person can use her as a sex slave, and that's okay. But it's wrong for you to use her. But also, prostitution was accepted. There's at least an account in Genesis where a guy goes out and sleeps with one of his relatives, thinking that she's a prostitute. Now, when he finds out that she's his relative, he wants to stone her to death because she's been prostituting herself. They find out she's pregnant, and that she got pregnant because she was being a prostitute. But then he finds out that, he was the one that she slept with as a prostitute, and then it was okay.
Well, it says in Leviticus 21:9, it says if a priest's daughter defiles herself by becoming a prostitute, she disgraces her father. She must burn in the fire.
Set her on fire.
The high priest, the one among his brothers who had the anointing oil poured on his head, and who had been ordained to wear the priestly garments, must not let his hair become unkempt. And then wow, that's a brief. Okay, by the way, if the priest's daughter's a prostitute, burn her. And then the very next law is like, keep your shit clean, priest. Like, do your laundry, bro. Yeah, the Leviticus is like it's just some funky shit. I love it, but it's so awful,
Yeah.
People thought that way, or people still do think that way. Like, I wonder when you go through this stuff with Trey, what he would say.
Well, and it's so random too. Like, it's not organized. It's not like, okay, these are the laws that apply to X, Y, and Z, and then it lists all of those laws, or it doesn't give like principles. Okay, anytime that someone does, something, judge it by this principle, like overarching principle, so that we can know, okay, this is what makes up morality. It's just a bunch of rules They're scrambled up and mixed up and not categorized broadly. There are some groupings, but it's just like some guy sat down and started writing, and it was just kind of a flow of consciousness. And then in another time, he talked about the same topics again. It's really not very bright.
Yeah, it's almost like a bunch of crazy people, wrote it and just mashed it all together.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going through some of these Levitical laws.
Well, and then when you think about it, that these laws were left up to interpretation by judges who were appointed by the priests or the leaders, whoever happened to be the leader at the time. If it was the priest, or if it was one of Moses or Joshua or Aaron or whatever, or later on the kings, and they really didn't have. There was no appeals system really. What the judge said was the law. The judges were known to be corrupt and accept bribes and things. It was just a terrible, terrible system.
Hey, Benneberry, did you get to the part? I know we were kind of joking about it, but are you aware of any of the American constitutions being based out of old? What was it, Gabby?
Well, he was trying to say separation of church and state was something that could be found in, based on biblical principles.
Yeah, but I thought he had other things too, other than that.
That's really all we got to talk about.
Okay. I was under the impression, and maybe I'm wrong, that the founding fathers and all that shit, there was a mixture of deists. There was, I think, some Christians.
Yes.
And some atheists, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't know if there were any atheists.
Oh, okay. Well,
Deist. Benjamin Franklin was a deist. Thomas Jefferson sometimes called himself a Christian, but he would not be accepted as a Christian by just about any Christian, Orthodox Christian that's out there today.
Okay.
He didn't believe in miracles. He didn't believe Jesus was the Son of God. He basically believed that Jesus was a moral teacher.
He's like a cultural Jew. He's I'm Christian, but
yeah, he went through the Bible and cut out all of the parts about miracles. It cut out all kinds of stuff that he just didn't like, and then kept the things that he thought were good moral teachings.
Isn't that what everybody does? Isn't that what most moderates do?
Well, they keep the miracle stuff, but yeah, they do cut out the stuff that they just don't like or don't agree with.
Beaterberry's right. He doesn't say much.
No.
I'm like, knock, knock. So overall, do you think, how long do you think it will take for you to get into another hangout with Trey?
I don't know. His schedule's kind of tight lately. I would talk to him more frequently. I don't have a problem talking with him. I think that it actually helps our cause when we engage with, and I would engage with other people too. I like talking to Jungle Jargon, even though he's goofy and constantly backpedals to his default. You believe objects make you, and that kind of baloney.
Yeah, I don't even get that. So he's just saying, is another one of those arguments where it's like, if you don't believe in God, then you just believe that. What does he mean by objects made you? I don't understand. He's saying it's almost like Trey's purposefulness, kind of thing, where it's like, to him, objects can't make things because they're inanimate or something. They don't have a, you know what I mean?
His position is, as I understand it, that just inanimate matter cannot create things that have what he says are written directives. So DNA is what he's talking about. That have, or programmable matter that couldn't arise from inanimate objects or matter.
I think, you know what, I had a comment thread with Jungle Jargon, and we exchanged back and forth. It was me, him, and I think maybe JD Kane or somebody else, and then he got to a point where he was started getting into that stuff, and my last response to him was, "Oh, I get it. You don't know what science is, or the scientific method, or biology, or physics, or anything." Oh, this makes much more sense. Have a nice day, kind of thing. Like, I mean, I didn't know if it was like Fox always cracks me up because at the end of every show that we do, Fox is like, "I'm done with Trey. I'm not speaking to him anymore. This is the last." And then like the very next day, he's all commenting, like deep threads, 40 deep,
Yeah, addicted.
It's so his crap.
What?
What was that?
Addicted to nonsense.
Yes.
Yes. Addicted to silly.
Classic. Is a classic. His mantra, it just goes on and on and on.
Like I think I have a cutoff point. Like I can talk to people, but I don't think I could talk to someone like Jungle Dragon, because that to me is like the ramblings of a crazy person. Like, it doesn't even make any sense. Like, he's so far gone in reality. Like, I feel I would have a better conversation talking to the homeless guy that shit his pants on the street corner. Like, that's what I'm saying. Like, it would be more productive.
For me, it's kind of like, well, I want to find where they're going, what they're about, what their routine is, and then just sit there and kind of blast away at it. With Jungle Jargon, it's great because I catch him dodging and dipping, and I will expose that fact every time I talk to him, because he's there. He does not want to talk about the content of the Bible or the actual doctrine or beliefs that he is. All he wants to talk about is this abstract creator God, and that's all he cares about. He doesn't care about the details or about whatever else, even though that's actually what he's really after and wants to convince people of. But he can't defend it. It's indefensible. And I think that there's value in exposing that fact. And the same with John Lawn, with his... He's much more annoying to me than any of these other guys.
That's your Trey Gadlow, by the way.
Yeah, and he is. And I have actually said I don't ever want to talk to him again, but I would. And I kind of regret saying that I would never do it again. But in recent... a thread that's, I think, more than 100 responses deep with John Lawn, I've exposed the fact there that he insists that everybody else present a syllogistic argument in defense of their foundations for knowledge, but he refuses to present his own.
But why are you required to do that? Like, you're not the one claiming anything.
Right, yeah, exactly. And he's saying, you want me to do it, but you won't do it. And I said, I've presented reasons why I think that a syllogism is not appropriate in this circumstance or for this, to reach the conclusion that you're after. I've presented counterexamples that show why syllogisms fail in certain circumstances, and I've made what I think is a good argument as to why it would fail in this circumstance. You have not rebutted that, but you continue to insist that your syllogism that a syllogism is necessary. I'll grant you that. Let's say I've failed. Now let's hear your argument. Let's have your syllogism. And he refuses.
Yeah, because it's the precept thing, right? So he can't defend his position.
Yeah.
If he defends his position, he fails his position.
Right.
Because he has to start with God. So it's just a schoolyard tactic. I'm right and you're wrong. Now just you have to prove that you're not wrong.
Right.
And that's it. And they don't have to do anything. They just stand there claiming they're right.
Yeah.
What a great position that is.
Yeah. Premise 1, I'm right and you're wrong. Premise 2, if you have any questions, please see premise 1, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, it's the pre-sup is still the worst. That thing is still the worst. And Trey's right up there with G-Man's little God's argument or his answered prayer argument.
Come on. Trey's is more sophisticated than that.
No, you know what it is? It's not the content of his argument, it's the presentation.
Well,
because is he as loud? No. Does he have the mental breakdowns? No. But he still cackles. He still smirks.
Yeah.
And still, you know what I mean? Like to me, he's he's a ridiculous man to me. But that's just me. And see, I think I've admitted this before, but I have a bit of a bias, right? So just that may be a shock to you, but
we all do.
But I'm one of those people that likes to talk. I enjoy the philosophical conversation here and there. The logical conversation here and there, and all that good stuff. But to me, when somebody says, "I know there's a God exists," and they bust off a Trey Jadlow argument from contingency, I almost immediately want to kick myself in the nutsack if I could, because I really think that I really don't find those kind of arguments convincing on any level. On any level, because they don't put that criteria on anything else.
Yeah.
They accept everything else science has to offer, or with the exception of evolution, unless you're pillbox, and then you accept nothing. But parts that conflict with their ideology and this and that, they will reject. But on the surface, at its core, they accept evidence for things and support and this and that, but just not with God. The criteria that they would normally use to determine if something is real or exists or is true goes out the window with God.
It's chronic special pleading.
Yeah, exactly. And so when I told this to Dre. I told this to Trey Jadlow the first time I talked to him. I said, I really think that if there was evidence for a God or the God that you claim exists, you would have said, hey, there he is. There he is, dark side of the moon, he's hanging out. But there's nothing. So they have to come up with these convoluted arguments that they rehash from people of days past and theologians, and they try to pass it off as some ironclad, fucking thing, and I just don't find them convincing at all. I think if you have to go through that, you on some level don't have any evidence at all, scientifically speaking.
Yeah. Yeah. The thing that I like to point to is, I think it was in First Kings, where oh shoot, what's the prophet's name? Doggone it. But anyways, this prophet of Yahweh comes out and takes on the prophets of Baal or Baal, and they set it up where there's an altar for Baal and there's an altar for Yahweh, and the prophets of Baal come out and they say, they're supposed to pray to Baal and have him light up the altar magically, and it doesn't work. And no, it's not Samuel. It's oh shoot, I think it's the same guy that sends the bears after the kids. Anyways, but he actually goes and mocks the other people. Oh, and he says maybe your God is on the toilet. That's how I usually find it. I'm gonna Google it right now. Elijah. So, and it's First Kings in chapter 18. So he says maybe your God is on the toilet. That's why he can't light up the fire, basically.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, well, and then he throws, according to the story, he throws all kinds of water on his altar for Yahweh, and then calls down Yahweh's fire, and there's fire from heaven, and lights up. It consumes the whole animal that they've killed to make him happy, plus all of the fire and water and everything is all burned up. If that stuff was going on, yeah, I'd believe that Yahweh was real. If people were able to produce those kinds of results, but anytime that I've suggested to a Christian that we perform that kind of test, they seem to balk.
The hell you say? No pun intended.
Yeah, imagine that, right? I'll set up an altar and I will light it using science. And you set up an altar, and you light it using Yahweh magic. We'll see what happens. And then you ask him, well, was that a valid test back when Elijah did it?
Yeah.
Well, you believe that objects make you,
Right.
is the kind of response that I usually get with that.
You don't know if you're in the right reality.
Yeah, exactly.
But
good,
yeah,
good stuff.
Good stuff. Oh man, I was gonna say something I totally forgot, dude. Like you'll be speaking, and I'm like, oh, I gotta say something, and I totally forget. My brain is like a goldfish.
Got to keep a notebook by your.
I know. I should. I normally have my little tablet out, and I'm like, a little keyboard, but not this time. I was so fired up. I really was. I was really. I mean. Not angry, but I was just kind of like, douchebag. I found myself saying douchebag in my head, like douchebag. No, it had nothing to do with his argument, just his attitude. It's just,
Douchey.
It's douchey. It's like douche level 10, like douche, Super Saiyan. Like, I don't know how else to put it. Like if you can maximize his douche level, I mean, it would be like the Death Star. Like it would be able to blow up planets, And I think he knows it, and I think part of it's a character, Like I think if you went and you were sitting next to him at Denny's or something, like he wouldn't be a joke,
I don't know. I think that's who Trey is. I mean, I would sit next to him at Denny's and I would have the conversation, but I tend to think that he's probably like this in person. On these subjects, like I think on other subjects, I think he's probably a really cool guy. Like at the very end of the hangout, his daughter came in. He muted himself and was talking to her, and then he came back and explained to me how he had this makeshift fix for a crack in his daughter's oil pan on her car or something like that, and he was laughing. He was kind of funny, and I was like, oh, that's interesting. So, but I don't know.
Well, I think his attitude can be so condescending. It's hard to see him as a human being. I mean, I don't mean that. Actually, I don't mean that to be insulting. I mean that in a way where it's like he puts on such a front. That's all that you see. It's like if I saw G-Man walking down the street or buying a cheeseburger, I'd be like, holy shit. He's like a dude. Like he's not like dancing around, be like and clapping and shit. Like that's what I think of. That's how he is, Like I know they're real people and they do normal things and they eat and shit and masturbate and all that stuff, but I'm like, I don't get I'd have trouble imagining Trey as like a human being. And the one question I wanted to ask him more than anything in the whole world was, how do you not like oral sex? Or do you like oral sex? Because he's so against the sodomy thing, which is, when he mentioned that, or whatever, blah, 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 sodomy, this and that, blah, blah, blah. And I'm sure he probably answered, well, of course I do. I'm a sinner, but, Oh, yeah, imagine that. Anyway. Well, I'm not sure how long were you planning on having this go on for?
I think I'm probably about done. It's probably a good place to give it a pause. We've been on for a little more than an hour, I think. So.
Dina, calm down, dude. You talk way too much.
Sorry, I'm actually eating lunch, so you're entertaining.
All right, well, I'm good. I would if I was. Oh shoot. Well, where are you in relation to Pacific Standard Time, Bina?
It's
Have to ask, Gabby.
12:18 in Sydney.
It's 17 past 11.
Oh, okay.
AM or PM?
AM.
Oh no shit.
He's in Sunday morning.
Yeah, that's it. Off to church. I mean, no.
Wow, dude, have you thought about moving to facilitate more Google Plus Hangouts?
Yeah, probably as much as Heathen has thought about moving to help the Australian people help get on Google Plus, right?
I may be mistaken as an Aborigine though. Anyway, I'm good. Bina, do you have anything else to say? I mean, you've been kind of quiet, so I don't want to talk over you.
I agree.
All right. All right, Gabby.
Well, it's been a pleasure, guys. Thanks for coming on and shooting the breeze. Catch you next time.
Bye.
Catch you later.